G'day guys, right, so here's an explanation of what went on to cause all the drama you saw in the previous video. This is the main prop shaft, goes between the gearbox and the transfer box in the car. So if we go over to the car and we have a look, this is the one with the red sticker on it there. It runs from the gearbox and it goes to the transfer box. So normally that would be the front of the car, because the engine is in the car backwards. That is now the back of the car. So that's our yoke, that's our output from the gearbox. It broke. The best we can come up with is that sheared off through there, allowed this cup to simply part company with the whole assembly. You'll see there's no real evidence of that shaking and wobbling, etc. inside that joint. It's just let go. There's some tiny scratches, probably from when it was put together, and that has just gone bang, disappeared, left that yoke sitting in this like that. So that started our shaky, vibraty boogie dance that poor old Matt had to put up with. At some point in time that's managed to completely exit that, and then the shaft has been free to spin around inside the trans tunnel. That's where the biggest problem started. Prior to it doing that, this is the end of the gearbox here, right? So this is actually the original housing off the car, which has now been replaced. You can see it's the original one because those plugs have been burnt, had a little bit of fire damage, and so the wires. So where the yoke goes into bush in the end of here, it's gone wobble, kill, die, destroy. Stretched out this housing and actually fired the bush inside the gearbox. So that bush was then living down inside this cavity down here, which is not good. It's not where it's supposed to be, obviously. So the next thing in line for all this car's carnage and destruction is this bearing, which you can hear it's not very happy. That was living down there. So fortunately I was able to drain the oil from the gearbox, get a couple of things out of the way, undo this row of bolts here, pull this housing off the gearbox, pull that bearing off, replace that bearing, check that shaft didn't have any run out on it at all, and then replace this housing with a new one with a good bush inside it, and put the yoke in and make sure we can still rotate with no issues, nothing bent. So that's all good. Otherwise I would have had to drop the entire engine, gearbox, transfer box, the whole shooting match to change the gearbox for a new one. So fortunately we didn't have to go down that path. Up under here, this joint here that you can see, which is now a CV joint, that was originally the universal joint, and that's the one that let go. So unfortunately for me, the design of the car, that was the worst one to fail. If this one at the front had gone, it probably wouldn't have been as bad. As soon as Matt got the car out of gear or turned the engine off or got the clutch in, the shaft would stop rotating and everything would stop there as far as damage continuing going forward. With that one failing, while the car was moving, that shaft keeps rotating. So although he pulled as much speed out of it as good as he could, he did an excellent job. It's just unfortunate that it let go completely before the car had actually stopped. You know, Murphy's Law, it broke at the worst place it could do on the track. It's the highest speed, and you don't want to stop in the middle of the track. You want to get out of the way, and that's what he was doing. And it's just the last few feet probably is where it all came to a bitter end. So what happened then, the fuel system was mounted up underneath here on a plate, with the theory that if the shaft failed, that plate had enough flex in it that would deflect out of the way, prevent massive damage from the drive shaft to the fuel system. And it worked for the most part. The biggest issue was a nut got struck by something, and that actually hit it in the right direction to crack the nut loose. And that's where the bulk of the fuel came from that caused that fire that you saw. It's probably only a litre. It doesn't take a lot of fuel to make a big fire. So, as you can see, fuel system now lives somewhere completely different, and we've got a bunch of hoses in between the components of the fuel system to give it some flexibility, so that if something gets a whack, we don't stretch a fitting or crack a nut or something like that as easily as we could have done with the previous design. Also the fact that if you can imagine you've got one of those filters on each end of one of those pumps, you start getting into packaging issues. You start running out of room. That's the only reason why they were living under here in the first place. It's the only reason. It's the only place that I could fit it all in without spending mega dollars on fittings to do it a different way. And obviously, that's what we've ended up doing in the end anyway. So, yep, there'll be a few people that'll be like, oh, blah blah blah. They've got hindsight and everything. It's very difficult to do these things. It's very easy to sit there on the internet and criticise. So anyway, we've got an aluminium panel underneath that, and it's shaped very carefully, a bit like an oven tray, but it's open at one end. That end that's open, that is at the back, it's on the downhill side. So if we do have a leak here, that will travel out of the car as quickly as practical, while still having protection from debris, etc. hitting that. It's not as low as it looks. It is actually tucked away quite nicely. By the time you put the panel on there, there's a good amount of clearance between everything and the bottom of the car. And also, as you can see, it's actually quite a wee way back from the front of the car. So, should be pretty good now. And these CV joints are very, very strong. Don't mind running at a bit of angle. So, we should be right. That was... in hindsight, you know, when I converted this one here to CV joints, then perhaps I should have done this one. However, at the time, it appeared to be having no trouble at all. Everything was lovely, good condition, no play, no signs of any drama. And it just went bang, and then there was big drama. So that's life, you know, race cars. Cool, alright, so coming up next, we've got Speed Show, and that's on the 20th and 21st of July. We've got Paul Radisich, he's behind the wheel again. We may share driving duties, just depends how much time he wants to dedicate to having a play in the car on the weekend, how keen he is to go faster. Knowing Paul, he's probably going to get in there and go, that was fun, I want to go quicker, and we'll be stop watching it, and it'll be great fun. If I have a play, probably not so much worried about the times, we'll just see how many donuts we can squeeze in. That's where it's at for me, it's all good fun. Alright guys, like, share and subscribe, etc. Hopefully we'll, the next video won't be anything like this. It'll be exciting, but for other reasons, like I say, donuts and things. Paul driving the car, we'll take a couple of people for rides in the car, and it should be all good fun. Not this sort of fun. Good fun. Alright, cheers guys, catch you later.